8 RH-53 helicopters took off from a Navy carrier in the Gulf of Oman, but they had to fly through a massive, unexpected sandstorm called a haboob that nobody had forecasted. 2 helicopters broke down en route. A third developed a hydraulic problem after landing. Now, they were down to 5 helicopters. The mission required a minimum of 6, so the commander, General James Vaught, called it off. And then, things got worse. During the withdrawal, a helicopter collided with a C-130 transport aircraft on the ground at the staging site in the Iranian desert. The aircraft exploded. 8 American servicemen were killed. And then they had to leave, leaving behind the burning wreckage, classified documents, and the bodies of 8 Americans on Iranian soil. Iran paraded everything on television. The images were humiliating. Carter's presidency never recovered. Many historians argue Eagle Claw cost him the 1980 election. But here's the thing. The mission failed not because the operators weren't brave or skilled. It failed because the plan was too complicated. The branches between different military branches were poorly coordinated, and nobody had a backup for the backup. After Eagle Claw, the U.S. completely overhauled its Special Operations structure. SOCOM, Special Operations Command, was eventually created specifically so this kind of inter-service disaster could never happen again. So Eagle Claw was a tragedy, but it made the whole Special Ops enterprise better. Yeah, that's a complicated legacy. Operation Anaconda, 2002. But speaking of complicated, Operation Anaconda is the one military planners still argue about in war colleges to this day. March 2002, Afghanistan. The Taliban has been routed, but al-Qaeda fighters are regrouping in the Shah-i-Qad Valley, a remote high-altitude mountain region. U.S. commanders believe there are about 200 fighters down there. Spoiler alert, there were a lot more than 200. The plan was for Afghan militias to push through the valley floor while U.S. forces set up blocking positions in the surrounding mountains to trap the enemy. Clean, simple, classic hammer and anvil. Except nothing went right. Afghan militia units stalled on the valley floor. Enemy numbers turned out to be closer to 1,000, and the high mountain positions, called the Finger, turned out to be defended by entrenched al-Qaeda fighters who had the high ground and were not leaving. One helicopter carrying a SEAL sniper team was hit by an RPG during an attempt to escape. Navy SEAL Neil Robbins fell out of the helicopter onto a ridgeline crawling with enemy fighters. The rescue attempt that followed, a series of helicopter assaults onto that ridgeline under fire, became one of the most intense close-quarter battles of the entire war. The battle eventually lasted 17 days. An estimated 500 al-Qaeda fighters were killed. The U.S. lost 8 soldiers. And the controversy? Commanders later admitted the intelligence was badly wrong. The enemy had more fighters, better weapons, and better defensive positions than anyone expected. The interagency coordination was a mess, and the air power that was supposed to be the great equalizer was slow to respond because of poor communication between ground troops and aircraft. The same problems as Eagle Claw, just 20 years later in a different desert. But the next one might be the most heartbreaking of all, because this one almost worked perfectly. Almost. The Son Tay Raid, 1970. November 1970, Vietnam War. Roughly 65 American POWs are being held at the Son Tay prison camp, 23 miles west of Hanoi, the capital of North Vietnam. U.S. intelligence has confirmed it. Prisoners are there, and they are being treated horrifically. So Special Forces Colonel Arthur Bull Simons leads 56 Green Berets on a daring nighttime helicopter assault directly into the camp. They land, they fight, they clear the entire compound in under 30 minutes with 0 American fatalities. That is textbook. But here's the gut punch. The prisoners weren't there. They'd been moved to a different camp 4 months earlier due to flooding. U.S. intelligence never picked up on it. The raid that was executed almost flawlessly, 0 Americans killed, every objective hit on time, rescued exactly nobody. 56 of the most elite warriors in the world flew into the heart of North Vietnam and came back empty-handed. But here's the thing everyone forgets. The Son Tay raid still shook Hanoi to its core. North Vietnamese leadership suddenly realized their capital was not safe. They consolidated POWs into a single location, which actually improved conditions for many prisoners. And years later, multiple Vietnam POWs said that just knowing the U.S. had tried, had come for them, gave them the will to survive. So yeah, no prisoners rescued, perfect execution, and somehow it still mattered. That's the thing about Special Ops. The line between legend and disaster is razor thin. These men trained for years, sacrificed everything, and operated in the places the rest of us never hear about. Some missions changed the course of history. Some ended in fire in an Iranian desert, and some succeeded so completely that they still came back with nothing. But every single one of them went anyway. And look, if this kind of history is your thing, you're going to want to check this out next.